Hi guys, Icon here from Attack Mag. In this video, we're going to be looking at the recently updated Cymasphere, which is a desktop music app also available in the App Store and on Google Play. Now at first glance, it may look a bit complicated, but after a bit of time, it's easy to see this is one of the more advanced and interesting intelligent chord creation platforms we've played with. If you're into jazz and the creators of this app are jazz musicians, you'll immediately recognize the Realbook's font, which is pretty cool. Now don't get too bamboozled by the GUI. It's designed for experimentation and it's designed to give you chords that even the most advanced musicians couldn't sequence, which is why it's great for electronic music. In this tutorial, we're going to show you how to get started. Just as a note, it can be used with a MIDI keyboard, but we're going to use the mouse to trigger the chords for now. Also, it's worth mentioning we haven't covered everything. It's way too extensive for a full walkthrough, but hopefully we'll show you enough to get you started. So if you want to give it a go, there's a 14-day free trial on their website, something to do over the holidays perhaps. As ever, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn the notification button on. We really appreciate the support. Here are some of the chord progressions we're going to create using Cymasphere. We'll start by opening up the program and selecting New Palette at the top left. Now we need to add banks of chords by clicking the cog icon at the bottom left and clicking the plus button that turns up here. There are lots of options and it may look a bit complicated, but all we want for now are simple major and minor scales. These are the modes of major and composite minor banks. We'll also add the diminished bank, but we'll explain why and how to use these specific chords later on. The way this program works is by directly sending full chord MIDI to your DAW anytime you click on these circle icons called cymatics. The cymatics are basically all variations of chords found in the selected keys of each bank. By default, we're in the key of C for all of our scales, but you can change this by clicking the numerals at the very top or by selecting the key manually here. We'll stay in C. This bottom panel above the keyboard has lots of controls and works in different layers. With the palette selected, when you change a panel control, this applies to every single chord in your palette. With the bank selected, you're only editing the settings of the chord in the horizontal bank. With the circular cymatic icon selected, you only affect whichever singular cymatic or chord is selected. This takes a bit of getting used to, but actually creates a very efficient and creative workflow. We'll look more into layers in some of the next steps. Cymasphere has an internal audio sampler with some piano, strings, and orchestral sounds. We'll just activate it with the piano sound to listen to some of the chords we already have loaded up. One crucial detail is that you need to click off the settings icon to hear sound. We'll also change this voice count to be controlled by the palette, as we don't currently want a set voice count for the chords. These chords we're playing are by default the simplest triad chords, but we're going to create some really unique and complex chords in just a bit. Let's jump into Ableton and make sure we're receiving MIDI. Cymasphere will appear as a MIDI device and you can select it as an input on your MIDI channel, just like a USB MIDI keyboard, for example. We have this Arturia June 6V Juno emulation loaded up with the classic Rode Pad preset, perfect for chords. We'll record arm it and head back to Cymasphere. We'll also just turn off the internal audio sampler. Now when we click the chords, we're getting the sound from our synth in Ableton with no latency. We'll hit record in Ableton to give it a try. Now let's start editing the chords to build up some great voicings and progressions. First, we'll make sure that the palette is enabled to affect every single chord in front of us. Then we'll activate the bass. This adds a root note 1 octave lower for every chord. You can also set the bass to pedal so it plays the same bass note with every chord. This can also create some amazing progressions. Thirdly, you can control the bass's sustain, so it sustains less than the higher notes of the chord. We'll keep it at full for now. Now we're going to click on the cymatic layer because we're going to edit some chords individually and not as a whole. In this bank of chords in the scale of C minor, we'll click on the first C minor cymatic and click on quality to change the voicing. Don't be intimidated by all the different chords here. You have to approach with an attitude of experimentation, and you can always demo the chords and see which notes are included by enabling the volume button on the far right. We'll test out the C minor 7 add 9 chord that is a 5-note voicing. Note that Cymasphere tries to tell you which chords may sound a bit too intense or dissonant by making them in red. That doesn't mean you should avoid them at all costs, but it just provides some guidance. The chords with circle icons are diminished chords, which can be harder to use, so let's change the D diminished chord here around a bit. That chord sounds nice with just a D, F, and G. We can make it even more interesting by using inversions. This just changes the order of the notes in the chord. For example, in the second inversion, the third note of the chord becomes the lowest note and bass note. And in the first inversion, the second note of the chord becomes the lowest, with this again applying to the bass note as well. Now for the E-flat major chord, let's go with a red marked chord to see what happens. By the way, we know it's a major chord because it doesn't have a minus for minor or circle for diminished next to it. We'll try the first inversion for a wider sound. Even with these 3 cool chords, we could get a great progression, but why stop there? Let's change up F as well to a bigger, more interesting voicing. We'll leave G major as it is and change this A flat to a 4-voice A flat major 7 chord. The composite minor bank also gives us these transitional diminished A and B diminished chords, but let's just edit the B flat chord between them. You can see how that B diminished chord sounds great as a passing chord between the B flat and C minor. You may not use a transitional chord like this if it wasn't in front of you, and it really helps to have them set up in a row like this. Now let's get a drum loop going in Ableton and record some progressions. Then all you need to do is cut up different moments and create different sections. Because we click the chords in, it might also require some quantizing or MIDI editing to tighten up the notes. This part could work as an A section, and then there could be a B section that nicely loops back to the start. It's really unbelievable to be able to get these chords down as MIDI and use whatever sound we want. Let's, for example, copy the MIDI to another channel and add some strings. There's a reason we added more than one bank of chords, and that is to use borrowed chords. These are chords from a scale outside of the main one we're working in. We worked in C minor thus far, but now we're going to use some chords from C's major scale. For example, let's take this A minor and make it an A minor 7. We'll do the same with E minor and make it an E minor 7. You could of course choose more interesting voicings as well. Now using these with the chords from C minor, our chord progressions will get into more jazz or advanced harmony territory. You'll be amazed at how great these can sound. Before we record, let's change our instrument to Arturia's DX7 emulation with the default E piano patch. We'll also activate the great strum feature in Cymasphere, which will make each chord strummed, adding a bit of a human element. You can edit the millisecond amount to extend the strum time. You can see the strums are also recorded into the piano roll. For the third example, we'll switch to a more ambient pad keys sound, DX7's rolled saw preset. Another great feature of Cymasphere is the internal sequencer, which is basically an arpeggiator with different patterns. All you have to do is input the same BPM as your DAWs. You could also add swing and edit the sustain. What's really great is that it sustains the bass note, making for a really full sound. Before we record, let's take a look at this third bank we have of diminished chords. In this bank, all chords are the same and they're all identical diminished chords. These are the scariest chords for people who don't know that much about music theory, but having them here is actually really useful. Let's firstly select the bank layer and change all of them so they're a little less plain. In the chord options, we'll just select the sixth voicing that will add one more note. Sounds a bit like Radiohead or Muse because they used to use diminished chords so much in their productions. With the sequencer, you might have to move around or quantize your MIDI notes a bit more, but you could always turn it off, record straight chords like we did before, and add your DAWs arpeggiator as an alternative. There are lots of features to explore with Cymasphere, like varying expressions and smart chords, but for our last example, we wanted to quickly demonstrate the voice leading. This smoothly connects the chord voicings by minimizing the leaps between notes. Let's quickly play in the same chord progression first with and then without voice lead activated on the whole palette. You can visually see it's different, but let's see which one we like more. The first chord with voice lead is kind of dark. The second half sounds much better with voice lead though. If we were to use this in a track, it would definitely be a mix of the two takes. As a final quick point, it's worth mentioning that having these kinds of large chords with the bass notes ready to go will make writing bass lines much easier as well. We can just copy the MIDI to another channel, delete all of the notes except for the lowest ones, and use that as a starting template for bass. We'll use Ableton's wobbly flag bass preset as an example. We've only scratched the surface of what can be done with this program, but you can head to cymasphere.com to see all of the features and more videos. Cymasphere is available for 3 different pricing options for monthly and annual subscriptions or lifetime ownership. It also works as an app on iOS or Android, with easy routing to phone or tablet-based software instruments as well. We hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for all of the latest content from Attack Magazine. See you next time.